Hello, I am Red Mage, and welcome to a Magic the Gathering video featuring the color red. In today's video, Boros Prowess in Thunder Junction Standard. This is an Illuminator Virtuoso deck, a 2-mana 1/1 with double strike that connives when you target it with a spell. When a creature connives, you draw a card, then discard a card, and put a counter on the creature if you discarded a non-land card. Ever since its printing in Streets of New Capenna, there have been players trying decks with Illuminator Virtuoso, Homestead Courage, and a supporting cast of other creatures, pump spells, and protection spells. For a long time, those decks were in Bant colors, white, blue, and green, because those were the colors that had the protection spells and other good creatures for targeting with pump spells. With the printing of Monstrous Rage, possibly the best pump spell in the history of the game, in Wilds of Eldraine, players started moving towards red. By that time, Loran's Escape, which gives hexproof, had been printed, so there was no longer a need for green and blue protection spells. Fugitive Codebreaker was printed in Karlov Manor, and then Slickshot Show-Off and Demonic Ruckus in Thunder Junction, making this more or less a mono-red prowess deck, splashing for the key white cards. Illuminator Virtuoso as the most explosive threat, Loran's Escape for protection, and Homestead Courage, which is perfect for the Virtuoso, as it can be discarded to connive for a +1/+1 counter, and then cast from the graveyard. This deck is sometimes referred to as Boros Heroic, because Illuminator Virtuoso's ability is reminiscent of the heroic mechanic in original Theros, which gave some benefit for targeting a creature. Our friend the Bird Wizard joins a Virtuoso as a great creature to target with pump spells, as it gets 2 power for every non-creature spell rather than the 1 that actual prowess creatures get. And it's really helpful to have more than one creature with that kind of damage amplifying explosiveness, especially since it has flying. Speaking of evasion, Homestead Courage is the only pump spell that doesn't provide trample, which is key for pushing damage through chump blockers. This deck list is the exact main deck that Magic Online player Wobbe used to go 5-0 in a couple of recent leagues. Most Boros Prowess heroic decks will look very similar. I used this one since it had established success and because it doesn't include Thran Portal. I hope you enjoy the gameplay. There is a great game against Esper Control in this video, where I misread a play they made, but it fortunately did not throw me off the correct lines, and we'll be back at the end to wrap up. Okay, so we definitely keep this hand. This is one of those interesting situations. Well, I think that answers it for us. I was going to say, do we wait to play this until turn 2 so we can hold up Loran's Escape? I'm not sure. It feels a little fancy without anything to do on turn 1, but since we can plot this, it seems like an easy thing to do. Okay. Well, that's fine. So we're just going to play this, put the Demonic Ruckus on it, and we'll hold up Loran's Escape. Oh. I mean, I'm not sure how much our deck will help them other than just having good threats in it. It's a little unfortunate. They kind of have a really good clock here. Okay, well that's a great draw. I guess we do the Anger. I was going to consider Homestead Courage, but is it worth putting the shields down since we have 2? We can get both of them out of range of the Harvester if they don't have more blood tokens. It's a little dicey. I mean, they wouldn't, surely. That would be kind of crazy. But what if they block the 3/3 Swiftspear? Then we're kind of forced to Loran's Escape. Okay. Well, I mean, that's fine. If they want to spend most of their turn, I don't think that's a problem. Okay, well, maybe a slightly early scoop on our opponent's part, but they probably could tell that we had a protection spell and were just annoyed by it and didn't want to play it out. So let's think about this here. Assuming that's the case, right? They don't have anything useful to do. Maybe they're just going to play that. We've got Demonic Ruckus on this Swiftspear plus 2 Homestead Courage. So they would both be 6 power. So that would be lethal. They would have to double chump one of the Swiftspears just to stay alive. That seems pretty good. So we're obviously missing white mana, but I think this is a keep anyway. We have a great start with Kumano into Swiftspear plus Monstrous Rage. That would be better on the play, of course, but have to be on the draw sometimes. We don't have a protection spell. We don't necessarily... I mean, almost certainly we're going to be facing either a counter spell or a removal spell. So we don't really want to play Swiftspear into Pump Spell. And since we don't have any way to protect it anyway, I think we play the Virtuoso. Maybe we'll get lucky. And if not, there's a reasonable chance we'll be able to unload on the Swiftspear next turn. Okay. Does that mean they have Liliana? I mean, every once in a while you run into an Esper deck with no interaction. Oh, I see. They're just doing that so they don't have to... doing that so they don't have to 2-for-1 themselves. Makes sense. So... we're going to play the Mountain first because... in case we draw something with the Ancestral Anger that we need white mana for. So this is unfortunate here. If they have a Wrath next turn, we kind of are just out of gas. Yep. Well, that is probably it, unfortunately. Wow. They could have countered that, but chose not to. Pretty bad sign. There's a super off chance here that if what they have is Wandering Emperor, we can actually get them if we are able to scry and then connive into a Loran's Escape. But we shall see. I don't think it's worth I don't think Monstrous Raging before combat is worth it. I think we need them to be tapped out trying to Wandering Emperor the Virtuoso before we go for that line. We could even consider casting Play with Fire. Before we decide if we want to go for that play. Okay. So I'm guessing they had some kind of removal spell and they were going to go for it if we tried to go for the win there. I think we do want to play with fire just for the scry. I don't see why not. Yikes. I don't think Monstrous Rage is good enough. We want another creature. Okay. I think we just let this go. And we'll try to scry into something at the end of their turn. I don't think... Since we are at the point where we could plausibly win out of nowhere, I don't think we want to just blow all our resources on something that's a very small chance of being successful. That's nice that they're afraid of that. Unfortunately, we didn't draw anything that we can punish them for countering that with. Okay, well, I mean, we've got a Loran's Escape, so let's go for it. I mean, that's all of the hard counters that I assume they play. I assume any other counter spell in the deck would be a No More Lies. But now they're able to refuel with Memory Deluge when we have nothing else to do, so this is weird. I guess they... I think that's a mistake. I guess it's possible we could have 2 burn spells, but I don't know. Alright, well, let's see. Alright. So, 1 Homestead Courage is not lethal on its own. So I'm going to just cast... I'm going to attack and just cast a Monstrous Rage. That way we can cast Loran's Escape and still pay for No More Lies. All right. Okay. Well, let's see. Wow. That's incredible. I can't believe we won that game. I thought we were well under 1%. After the temporary lockdown, I thought we basically had no shot there. Well, we can't keep this. If any of these were a land, this would be a pretty good hand, but Okay. Well, not ideal. I mean, it's pretty good. But it always feels bad to play a tap land on turn 1 and do nothing. Okay, since our opponent played Mountain Go, reasonable chance that they have a play with fire. Well, I guess let's go to combat. Yeah. If there was no stick at all, then maybe we could consider the Virtuoso. But we'll just plot here, and then we can play Virtuoso next turn. Oh. So yeah, I think we play Virtuoso. We'll plan on Monstrous Raging it to save it if we need to. Otherwise, we're going to cast both Show-Offs next turn and either the Monstrous Rage or Homestead Courage. Alright, so I mean, we've got to save it. We've got to try anyway. Especially since we've got Show-Off plus Homestead Courage back up. Yeah. What are you going to do? Yeah, so we discard this since we can cast it from the graveyard. You have Monstrous Rage too? That's pretty rough. Alright. Chances we die next turn, high. So let's see. If we drew a land with Ancestral Anger, that's not lethal, right? That'd only be 5. Yeah, that's nowhere near lethal. Okay. So in that case, I'm going to Homestead Courage so that we can potentially block. Just basically chumping to soak up some damage, but we'll see. I'm not sure that's what we'll do. Okay. Oh. Well, that's great. Now we just win. That's a great win. We lost the war for the Virtuoso, and we're still able to pull it out. I haven't seen it as commonly on the ladder, but I have noticed that Urabrask's Forge has been increasingly common in mono-red aggro decks, putting up results on Magic Online. And we're back to wrap up. I went 10-6 with this deck on the ladder for a 62.5% win rate. That's certainly a win rate that I'm happy with any deck. As far as changes go, this deck has the sort of classic problem of needing to fit more cards than it has space. Specifically, I feel like it needs more 1-drops. It's hard to argue too much with the results. This deck with fewer 1-drops, focusing more on the powerful 2-drops, has had a lot of success. And to be fair, Demonic Ruckus, because you can plot it for 1 mana on turn 1, does give you a lot more to do on the first turn than you otherwise would have without more 1-drop creatures. That being said, I think it might be worth considering playing Cacophony Scamp in this deck. If you wanted to make it more explosive but less resilient, you could cut the Fugitive Codebreakers and maybe like 1 Loran's Escape and 1 Demonic Ruckus, or 1 Ancestral Anger. I'm not entirely sure. And then you could play the full 4 Kumano Faces Kakkazan and 4 Cacophony Scamp. Doing that does give up our only source of card advantage, but Fugitive Codebreaker is definitely the worst threat as far as just straight threats go. It is the slowest and clunkiest. We already have 8 2-drop creatures that are incredibly explosive and can win the game. I think what we need more of is turn 1 plays that can get us going so we're less reliant on our 2-drops sticking. That being said, I could certainly see just playing this exact list and doing quite well with it. I definitely will say that even though I think Sundown Pass is a better choice than Thran Portal, I did have a lot of games where coming into play tapped in the first 2 turns was really punishing. I don't know that playing Thran Portal, I mean, obviously that solves the issue of coming into play tapped on the first 2 turns. I'm not sure it would be better overall because of the life loss, but also because it comes into play tapped later in the game. And there are going to be situations where you really want your 4th land to come into play untapped. Let me know in the comments what configuration of Boros you prefer, and I'll see you in the next one.